So, we've requisitioned some new ships from Mineco. They just arrived today.
Oh man, look at these things.
I know, right? They're really cool.
Oh, what do these babies do?
We've got 2 new grinder ships here. They are fully equipped with 2 fully automatic part grinders. You can slice through basically whatever.
Oh man, look at these. These are huge.
Yeah. Those are our tugboats. We requisitioned. They're able to pull massive ships through the air. Well, with the lack of air, I should say.
Oh my god. What?
You should watch
Space
out
Rex.
with that edge.
Look at that space.
Are
Look
you
at all that
listening to
space
me? No.
Ah!
Oh no. Alfred, are you okay? Oh dear. Oh, alright, so when parts are sucked into the grinders, I think they get pulled down here into the conveyor system. They'll probably be about here in the piping. We'll follow along here. Ooh. Alright, then it reaches this corner part. I'll open the door here. Alright, let me just fly up in here. There. Okay, so we get sucked through that conveyor into the small cargo container, through another conveyor into the large cargo container, and from there into the garbage disposal. Alfred, you okay in there?
Ah, for the love of... Everybody relax, I'm okay. It's a little bit ridiculous. Alright, welcome everybody. This is our second episode in our Bendi teaches Alfred how to play Space Engineers series. Just quick recap of...
abbreviated to...
Well, yeah, I think.
Batapsy.
Yeah. So, quick recap of the first episode. We demonstrated some of the systems in the game and also how one might go about obtaining ore from asteroids. Now we have, as you can probably see, we have a variety of new ships which which Bendi has gone to the trouble of constructing for us ahead of time, and also some nearby floating space wrecks. And Bendi, maybe you can explain why that is.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's at some point in the past, in eons past, a large space battle has taken place, which was completely obscured in the last episode for space reasons.
Yeah, we just
in this episode we'll be going
happened
over...
not to look in that direction.
Yeah, we just never quite looked far enough. You know, sometimes your eyes just aren't open. Well, this episode we'll be going through the process of salvaging ships, like last time when we refined our own parts. This time we'll go around taking those parts from perhaps they're yours, perhaps they're someone else's broken down ships. Or if you're feeling particularly sadistic, someone's still active ship, it all works the same. So we've got these ships to do very specific tasks relating to
that. So first, this probably begs the question, why would I want to, or what are the advantages of salvaging stuff from derelicts as opposed to mining and making my own stuff out of ore extracted from asteroids?
Well, the thing is that with ore extracted from asteroids, obviously you do get large amounts, but you get large amounts for a very specific resource. Like, you'll get massive amounts of iron from just a few minutes of mining, but the ore deposits are always spread out far apart. You can never guarantee getting all of the ores you need on one asteroid, which means a lot of time, and potentially, you know, it could be a life or death situation, a lot of time is wasted going between asteroids trying to track down all these different ores you need. Whereas all the parts in that ship over there are just as good as all the parts in your own. So you could just go and take the ones that are already there, ready for you, you know? So it's like you save time mining, you save time and power processing the ores, and yeah, it's just generally easier. It's just
right. So it's like we're scavenging finished parts already, which saves us several steps in processing and refining and assembly.
Yeah.
It's like building, I guess, building a house out of the parts of another house, rather than from the ground up. Building, you know, like baking your own bricks and cutting your own timber.
Yeah, I mean, I could go and refine the iron to build my own sink, or I could go and steal my neighbor's sink. You know, it's already there; it's all ready to go.
Okay, so well, maybe you could explain the different ships we'll be using.
Well, if you look at these here grinders, you'll notice a stark similarity to our drill ship. I've now got another one. One of my own exists for a start. But they've got grinders on the front instead of drills, right? So drills are very specialized. They tear through this stuff over here, you know, the asteroids, the voxel terrain, but they do very little to the hull of a ship. They just sort of scratch it and break it. It doesn't really help. So we've got grinders here, which will essentially act like a handheld grinder, which we've demonstrated previously, where it will essentially undo the construction in a perfect process. It'll undo it completely, so you get all of the resources used back. So these ones here, I've attached them to this ship for the purposes of slicing big chunks off of the ships over there to bring back here.
Okay, and perhaps you could explain the function of these giant ships that look a little bit like ladders.
Well, yeah, these are, you may notice, a overabundance of rather large engines. That and, well, many, many, many gyroscopes. That's because these ships are not really designed to get you around. It's far too it'll take far too much power to be practical for just moving you around places. These ones are designed to shift ships much bigger than themselves, which is why the landing gear is on the front. So we'll pilot one of these over to that ship. We'll lock the landing gear onto one of the chunks that the grinder ship has sliced off, and we'll bring it back here and put it in this large grinder bed, which Alfred so unceremoniously fell into in the intro.
Oh yes, and I should mention uh, they are fatal. So if you fall into
Yeah,
a giant drill or a giant bed of grinders or something, you will die.
very, very bad experience. You can see them spinning from here. It's generally easier to just leave them running. So, yeah, don't slip. Basically, do not get too close.
All right, so the game plan here will be for Bendi to take one of the Rabber ships over to one of the wrecks. He will latch on, and then I will grind off a chunk for him to steer back to the station and throw into the grinder bed.
Yep. We'll try and get the most expensive looking piece of those ships and bring it back for our own consumption. When this ship is idle, I've got a fuel time of 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
All right.
Right.
Shall
You
we
ready to go?
shall we salvage some salvage? I probably should have phrased that better.
Absolutely. It's a little bit of a journey, but not too far with the massive engines of this ship. So yeah, it's about 600 meters. Use our big engines to slow us down. Probably massively
Yes,
overshoot.
yes. I'm noticing I'm
Oh,
having a
just like that.
having a problem
Bye.
decelerating.
Yeah, they're not designed to be too agile. The grinder
Okay.
ships.
If you could find a likely looking chunk. Oh wow, these are very powerful
All right.
spotlights.
Oh, I forgot to attach spotlights to the tugboat. Oh well. Let's have a look. So you can identify some of the parts remaining on these ships. Some of them more expensive than others. Generally, what we're looking for is the machines like refineries and things. Like this one right here has several refineries and large reactors, which would be very, very nice. So I think what we'll do is we'll go for this chunk right here. I'll just lock my landing gear to it so it doesn't go spinning off into space, and just get in the position right here.
Okay. And I guess I
There,
will.
okay.
What would be the best wave angle of attack for me?
Alright, I'll just hop on out now. I think if you were to come over here, it's going to require some precise piloting on your part.
Uh-oh.
It may actually be easier to access it from behind, like around this side.
Okay.
Alright. So let me just see which side I park my ship on. That side. Okay, so if I mark with my grinder a decent spot to slice, like right here.
Oh, so we're going to cut the ship more or less in half? Like this is a really big chunk you're talking about.
Yep. We can easily, if it's too big, we can easily, slice it down closer to home. But for now, we're just trying to remove a sizable chunk and bring it back.
Okay, so I'll
Right?
try grinding along that plane.
Very, very gently. If
Eesh.
you bump too hard in, I know grinders are obviously designed to like bite into the ships, but if you bump into them too heavily, it will damage the grinder, and they can snap off unceremoniously.
Okay,
Right?
this is
Yeah, doing a good job.
not too bad. A little bit like taking a chainsaw to a tree. Hitting some rough
Yeah,
patches
this is
here.
about the point. This is about the point where we would probably end up going and spinning off into space had I not latched my ship to it. That's why you want to try and avoid bumping it, because even the larger piece will just go drifting off if we were to nudge it after it's no longer connected to my ship.
Right. This must be a tremendous pain in the butt to do solo.
Uh, I mean, it kind of is, but you can most of the processes you can sort of semi-automate. Like I can just park my tugboat on the side of the ship and then leave it there, and it'll make sure things don't drift off for me. And then you can get more advanced handheld grinders, like when you're slicing the ship in half. Obviously, oh yeah, there goes a
Whoa,
piece.
whoa, whoa. All right, they're separate. I
Well,
think. Have I separated that chunk from the main ship?
yes, you have. It's all good. All right, I'll just hop back in my ship a second. All right, we just. Ooh. Why am I all of a sudden getting a nasty frame rate? 1 second, let me just resolve that. Ah, I see. My bad.
Okay, so this large chunk of ship is now so it's free to move. I mean, these other ships are stable in space because they're ships, or like why aren't they continually drifting?
Well, the ships have initial dampeners on them, which essentially allows the engines to fire in whatever direction they need to slow the ship to a halt whenever you're not actively trying to move it. And since we're locked to this piece with landing gear, it will obviously exert force over that piece as well. So if I move myself in this direction like this, as soon as I loose go of the key, you'll notice the engines will just slow it down on its own.
Okay.
I should probably have looked behind me before suddenly moving off like that. Alright, let me pop my yaw back on so we can tell which direction we're going. Okay, so just move this gigantic piece of ship down a bit,
That's pretty impressive.
and
It's a big
it's
chunk
good,
of
right?
ship.
Yeah, we've strapped enough engines to this thing to be able to move it reasonably. Ah, the problem is the gyroscopes, man. Even with all the gyroscopes, I've got 11 gyroscopes on this ship, and it's still a pain trying to point this thing in the direction I needed to go in. But that's to be expected. This ship is, well, my ship is 533 kilograms. The mass overall currently is 192,000 kilograms.
Oh, wow.
So that's sort of the comparisons.
So multiple gyroscopes have a cumulative effect?
Yep. They pretty much just keep stacking. It's not really diminishing returns. It's just on larger ships. Obviously, one metal block weighs a lot more on the large ship as opposed to a small one.
Okay, so
So, like,
what's
if I had one large gyroscope, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say what's our next step from here? Now that we've dragged a chunk back to the station.
Right, the objective is for me to not slam into the runway. So give me a second to achieve that objective. There we go. Alright, now I'll move on over to the grinder bed. And this is where you kind of have some delicate work to do. Like, I'll just try and avoid, again, slamming into anything. You really do have to not build up any momentum with this. So we'll just maneuver into position. It's kind of turned out far better than I expected. Truth be told, this ship actually controls very well, pulling such a large chunk, which, I mean, I'm quite happy with. So it looks like we're a little too high. Just
Now, I
angle my
notice
ship correctly.
the things that grinders, as I think we demonstrated in our opening sequence, the things that grinders grind are sent through the conveyor tubes. Now, is there a maximum sort of throughput those tubes can handle? Or do they just
The
handle
conveyors
as much
it
as
transfers things
can go through?
almost it transfers stuff almost instantly, so there's not really a throughput as such. But obviously there is a. Ooh, hang on. Would you do me a favor? Would you move the orange Tugboat.
Oh, yes.
Parked that a little close. I think I just nudged it.
Yeah, I'm going to leave this grind ship here. Oh, whoops, there we go. Maybe you could back your ship up a little bit. That's very, very close.
Nah, it's fine. It's fine. You got this. Roll into pilot ships, man. It's time to learn.
Okay.
Thread
P
the needle.
to disengage.
Alright. So we've already ground off the large antenna on the underside. Now, one thing we do have to keep an eye out for is bits breaking off and just jetting off. So that's probably what you'll need to be doing, is you'll keep an eye out. You'll be in your grind ship, you'll keep an eye out for any larger chunks that split off that could be a hazard to us later, and you'll catch them with your grinder. Like, I doubt anything too bad will come of it. They won't be going too high velocity, but it's best to keep an eye out for them anyway. And you can also see now that we're slowly grinding through the bulk of the ship.
Okay,
and
yes.
This should give us quite a large number of resources.
Wow, this is great. This is each layer of the ship just sort of slowly grinds down into girders and then presumably into resources and then disappears.
Yep. Well, you can see now that once we've ground this up, the beauty of salvage over like building it yourself is you can tell exactly what we'll be able to build using these components. Like, after this, we'll be able to construct 2 refineries, 2 gyroscopes, an assembler event. You know, you get it.
Right.
Yeah. So you can quantify exactly what you can build with it, which is nice.
Oh, we've got a loose floating console.
Oh dear.
It
doesn't seem to be. Yeah,
I'll get that.
Yeah. Good job, Private Alfred.
So delicate. Ugh.
Oh no! Space debris, ho!
Maybe I'll just let that one go.
The components will sit in there until you remove them.
Even the grinders themselves have
storage,
quite a lot of storage. 37,000 liters? That's a weird unit to measure.
Oh boy.
Oh!
There's a large piece of space rubble for you. Just change
what's
the
the
orientation
best way for me to... Ideally, I want to push them back toward the grinders.
I think this piece now, we should be able to get most of this done in this last bit. Yeah, there you go. One concern as you get closer and you're refining smaller and smaller pieces, oh dear, is you do have to keep an eye out for grinding your landing gear. Like, I nearly took my landing gear off my own ship right there.
Literally grinding your gears.
Not really grinding my gears. The station's grinders, that's what. There we go. I rescued it.
Okay.
Yes.
I am going to pop out of my ship and back into the station because I am nearly out of air.
Yeah, as am I. I've got about 20% left. Alright, let's check out our storage now. Let's see how many parts that got us. Oh boy, yep. That's a lot of parts. We've gotten 263 computers and 2.2 thousand steel plates. That's a lot of plates. Yeah, 2,200 plates. Oh, nice.
I mean, we could assume that we could probably assemble a ship of approximately the same volume as the chunk we ground. Would that be a safe assumption?
Yep. The only problem being, obviously, if we were to try and build a ship out of it, we wouldn't have any engines, but yeah, everything we ground we could easily rebuild in whatever configuration we choose.
Great. All right, so we have a giant surplus of parts.
Yep. Regarding construction, obviously you could always use more assemblers. The production tab is split between all your assemblers, so the more you have in your network, the more you can produce at once. So yeah, perhaps we could go over the construction of the base assembly line now.
Yeah, actually that would be great.
Alright, well, if we head outside, I'm gonna use the airlock rather than the huge doors.
Yeah, I think we need
saving our oxygen.
The airlock was a really good idea. Other than it saves us from having to evacuate the entire station of all its air.
I feel like our station's a little impractically designed right now. Perhaps we'll improve it over the course of the series.
Huh. This chunk I'm looking at it looked much smaller from a distance. Now that
Yeah,
I'm
it's weird how
now that I'm adjacent, it's actually larger than me.
you know, all the pieces look so tiny and like a little speck in the distance. But if I were to fly on over to that, it's a catwalk actually, so it is only as small as it looked. But we'll grind it up. 3 parts. Okay, so
All right. So what's this?
all right.
What's this neat scaffolding we have here on the landing pad?
Well, I've assembled the base components every station will need to become sort of self-sufficient. Here, well, I tell you what, we could build them as we go through them, right? So,
Great. And we can use those parts that we
pardon me.
scavenged from the chunk of ship.
Yep. So if we get out our welding tools and go close enough to a ship piece, it'll tell you exactly where you need to construct that. So we see we need 100 steel plates, computers and motors, and all those, and then 1,000 more steel plates. So why don't we start applying all those now? I think I'll just nab as many of these as possible and just.
So I'll weld it.
It's worth noting whenever you.
Oh, so I'll weld it with the parts I have in my pocket. But once those are out, I can retrieve them from this storage, which I believe you connected to our central storage.
Yep. Once you start welding something, it'll take the parts that apply to it out of your inventory. So you can feasibly just take random parts from storage and just keep going back and welding it a bit to see which parts you need, rather than individually counting things out, which sometimes takes quite some time. So that's basically what I'm doing, just grabbing random pieces that I think we'll need. Large steel tubes is what we're missing. There they are. Okay, so this piece, in case the UI hasn't tipped you off, is the refinery. It's basically the first step in a self-sufficient station. You put in ore, it'll refine it into ingots, which are then put through the assembler to make the pieces, right? Okay, so as we demonstrated in the last episode, you drop ore in here. It is then immediately pulled through the conveyor tubes into the refinery, which will automatically start refining them into ingots. Alright, we go through these conveyor tubes here into the assembler, which we'll put together now. We need steel plates and construction components.
Now, the assembler takes raw ores, and it basically uses them to manufacture finished components. Is that correct?
It takes refined ingots from the refinery and then
okay.
uses it to manufacture the individual pieces.
But it can manufacture everything.
Yeah, this is where you get all of the parts you need to build the blocks in the game.
Now, is there an advantage to having multiple assemblers? Is there a maximum bandwidth or throughput?
No, you so long as they're all connected to the same conveyor network. The conveyor tab isn't actually tied to an assembler. It is just the production tab. Sorry, isn't actually tied to an assembler. If you look at it, as I am now, it will you just select parts for production, and it'll use any assembler, any resources in that the conveyor network you're attached to build what you're asking for. So yeah, all of them, as many as you want, can work in tandem, which is obviously very, very, very useful. And you'll note it actually has a conveyor port right on the side, so you can stack them up if you like. It's just like have a big old stack of assemblers, all working in tandem.
So each of these yellow squares is a potential port for a conveyor?
I'm not actually sure what these small ones on the side do. I'm pretty sure they have a function. I think it's for interfacing with smaller objects, but the ones you need are these large ones, like on the underside and the top side.
Okay, right.
Here, it looks
this big one
like
down
a hatch.
Here. Ah, okay.
Yeah. Alright, the next machine would be the large storage container. You don't need a large one, like you can use multiple smaller ones, but for simplicity it's usually best to build a large one, because a large cargo container on a station is different to a large cargo container on a small ship, right? Large cargo container on the station can hold a ridiculous amount of parts, like absolutely hundreds of thousands if I remember correctly. So you build one of those on a station you just started on. It'll take a decent amount of resources, but will keep you in business for a long time. so you never have to sort of slow down your production because you've got no more space.
Right. That makes sense.
Okay, there we go. And boom. Alright, there. It's, assuming we were to finish this conveyor tube off. Yeah, it's now ready to take parts. When an assembler produces parts now, well, this assembler here, it will immediately shunt them into the cargo container to stop its own storage getting full.
Okay.
Right.
And what's on the end of this cargo container here? Or what are the modules? Oh, I see it's a grinder.
That's the... Yeah, that's a grinder which we are familiar with from earlier. And, well, obviously it grinds things into their parts, as we showed earlier. The reason I put it there is to show that it can go straight into storage. You know, simplifying the process, as we did with the large grinder bed earlier.
Okay, so this whole thing is actually a smaller model of all of the various machines and components that we've already set up inside the station.
Yeah, we've just set them all out here to clearly display how everything interacts in a sort of smaller scale.
Now, is everything here powered? I think...
Yep, it's all attached to the station, so everything is powered. The reason this part here is red is because this grinder isn't done. There you go. Now, nothing. You don't need to connect wires or anything like that. So long as it's on the same station as a working reactor, it will be powered.
So power can be transferred through just adjacent armor blocks? Is that... I believe that's the case,
Yep.
right? So just by sitting on
Yep,
the landing pad, the entire station has power, so this assembly has power?
Yep, this assembly is now fully functional. It will do exactly what you need it to do. So this effectively, if we attach a reactor, we could just slice off the runway and it would be its own fully functional station.
Ah, neat. Now I do know...
so we could just... we could, in theory, strap some engines to it and fly it off.
Oh, the ugliest ship in the galaxy.
It gets put into storage.
Now things can travel both directions in a conveyor. So if the assembler, for instance, needs ores, it can draw them from either the cargo container or the refinery.
Yeah, it can pull it from anywhere in the connected network. What's worth noting is, like, say this assembler was a reactor or something, parts can pass through, like the reactor, but it won't do it by default. So the reason I have this conveyor going straight from the cargo container to the refinery is because while parts can pass through the assembler, like an iron ingot could pass through the assembler to go to the cargo container, it won't do it by default. It will instead just sort of gather all in there until you move it manually, because it won't want to put things through the assembler on its own. That's what the conveyor is for. Did that make sense? I'm not sure I explained that very well.
Yep, I understand. Is that a setting you can choose?
Or no, I think that's just part of the behavior of conveyors.
Okay. Great. Okay. So the next time we need something ground and I don't know, it's relatively small, we could just drive it up to this small grinder here, for instance.
Yeah, this all works now. This is all fully functional. We've made our own mini station. Perhaps we should, perhaps we should slice it off and fly it away.
The storage of this assembly line is not connected to the base storage. So the things it
no.
So the things it accumulates stay right here. They stay local.
Yeah. So while it is powered, it's not connected to our station via the conveyor tubes. So the conveyor tubes, obviously, while power is transferred through armor blocks, objects aren't. They are only transferred through tubes. So if I were to connect a tube from, say, this refinery slot here over to the cargo container there, then it would all share parts. This assembly here, this assembler and the refinery and whatnot, would then work in tandem with the one indoors. They would share resources as they were put into either hopper. You know, they would interact as one big network rather than two individual ones as they are now.
Okay. Great. So just to sum up what we've done in this episode, we've demonstrated practical ways to salvage from space wrecks and the advantages of doing so. I think we've demonstrated how we might go about scavenging useful components from that salvage. And we've demonstrated an assembly or a production line here, which will allow us to refine and refine ores and manufacture components on a larger scale.
Yep. All very useful skills to have.
And so going forward, we'll have the resources to, say, build larger ships or stations and things like that.
Yeah, and we should actually have enough resources to build a fairly large addition to our station if we so chose. The main thing we're lacking is motors, I'm noticing, which obviously there are plenty more in the rest of those racks over there were we inclined to get them.
Great. Yeah, so I think we're well set up for subsequent episodes when we're actually going to try building things.
Yep.
And I'm going to be relying on
Perhaps
your
next time
expertise
we'll
in that
build.
area again.
Perhaps we'll go through building all the components necessary for a small ship or something.
Mm. Great. Well, I think that will do it for this episode. Thanks, everybody, for joining us once again for Bendi Teaches Alfred How to Play Space Engineers.
BTAPSI for short.
Yes. So we, Bendi, maybe you could just give viewers a quick recap of things you do on your own channel.
All right. Well, my channel is Robust Theory. I make videos on games such as, well, not so much Space Engineers normally, but similar games where you have a lot of working parts and conveyor belts and automated machinery and people to control, such as RimWorld, Dwarf Fortress, and all that good stuff. I do as many different games in that genre as possible and try and bring a bit of a whimsical approach while also complaining about everything that comes to mind. How about you?
Well, I don't have quite as much variety in the stuff I cover. Once a month, I look at where Clockwork Empires is going. So that's a game in early access, and just look at the latest patch. And occasionally, I do things like this. I've done a couple of things with Bendi now, or just general goofing off, or videos of me painting things, I guess, if that's the sort of thing you're interested in. We'll have links to both of our respective channels in the descriptions of this video.
Absolutely.
Great. Otherwise, I think that'll do
Thank
it.
you all very much for watching.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Okay, bye.
Bye bye for now.